topic today, by the way, is bringing spontaneity, and for those who will watch the recorded version, we already just read this, but I'll go through it again. November 23rd. Flow through life as though on a downhill ski run. Don't puzzle your way through it as if playing a game of chess, plotting each move carefully in advance. Bring spontaneity to everything you do. The smooth flow of intuition can be disrupted by too careful reasoning. Rely more on soul guidance. And as I was saying, the spiritual path, on one level we say it is long, even the scriptures say it is really long. The Srimad Bhagavatam states, and Kriyananda used to quote this often, they said that, how long is the spiritual path? And the Srimad Bhagavatam says, imagine a lake, the borders of which you cannot see. And there is so much water over there, and a bird comes there once in every 5,000 years and takes a beak full of water and goes across a mountain range and drops the water there and then comes back 5,000 years later. And it says the amount of time it will take for that bird to dry up that lake does not begin to describe the time it takes for our souls, once put into manifestation by God, to go back in home to Him. And that is very long, and some of you may be wondering that is impossible. Maybe we don't have so many lives as a human being, which is, at least that's my thought, because that will be so long. But the good news is, in the same book, it describes the 4 stages of manifestation for a soul. First of all, Yogananda ji said, we are born in the mineral stage, as a rock, as a, you might say, stone. And once he declared to his disciples in this life, he says, I remember all my past lives. That is, by the way, you might say power, a knowing, as the knowing of intuition. It comes when we have perfected non-attachment. So we get to know our past lives. And Yogananda ji said, I remember all my past lives back to when I was a diamond. And think about that. How his soul was in a diamond, big or small, but it was there, manifested, you might say crystallized. God manifests Himself and in a stone form. How long is the lifespan of a stone? Or let's say of a planet, of a mountain range, of the Himalayas? It's very long. Somebody asked Kiranji that question. But sir, that's very long. And he says, I know. The good news also is, at that stage, we don't have that awareness or consciousness, which is, let's say right now, very refined in us, of the I, the self-identity. I am Aditya, or I am a man, or I am a devotee, and the many, many different ways. My foot is hurting, I am healthy, I am hungry. So many of those, you might say, the way in which we take care of ourselves is defined by that ego identity. But for a stone, that's not the case. They say God sleeps in the rocks. And then in the next stage, He manifests. The soul moves on into a more fluid state by moving into the plant kingdom. Then into the animal kingdom, and many, many incarnations over there. The Bhagavad Gita says 5 to 8 million incarnations in the animal kingdom is what a soul has to go through. And finally we come to the human incarnation. And once we come to the human incarnation, you would think, oh, finally intelligence comes upon us. It does. But also what comes upon us is free will. And there we have the choice of moving upwards on the scale of consciousness or coming downwards. Why would anybody come downwards? It's a very interesting question to ask. But recently I was reading, Yogananda defined evil as that thing which takes us down. And then Kriyananda asked him, but sir, how do we know what is evil? And he says, the absence of true joy is evil. It is not job, it is not money, making money, not making money, it is not marriage versus monasticism and X, Y, Z. He says it is determined by your absence or presence of true joy. So when the soul starts moving in all these, it does take a long time, but as a human being, if we determine to be joyful, we do those acts, our behavior, our attitudes are aligned in that fashion. If our devotion and the soul which is inside of us finally starts asking, what am I really here for? An answer comes from inside. Maybe to become one with everything. Because you see, friends, all intelligent people, some or the other time are going to ask themselves this question. You could be the president or the prime minister of a country and you will ask this question. In this short span of, let's say, 20 to 100, which is where we apply our intelligence and we become aware of our surroundings, our own self, we seek our goal in life. What is my real contribution going to be? Not only externally, but to myself. What am I here for? So many tragedies happen in life. What are we really trying to accomplish? And how can I become a good friend to my relatives, to my family, to my friends? How can I do then something else for maybe my community, for my country, for a maybe world revolutionizing invention or something? All these goals come. But again, after all those have gone, the final question will remain, am I here just to one day become dust by being buried or ashes by being burnt? And I once asked somebody that question. I said, do you really think life is going to end? You have to ask people the question which they are trying to move across. And I was trying to help this gentleman. I said, do you really think your life is going to end? He thought about it. He says very quickly, he didn't give deep thought to it, I could see. He says, oh, of course, what else? What else? And he says, we enter nothingness. And I let him be there, because sometimes actually Paramahansa Yogananda ji's guru, Sri Yukteswar, said, we all are like a bird in a cage. And he said, we step out for a while when the door has been opened and we move around, we are very happy. But if asked immediately to go too far, we would be afraid and we come back to the familiarity of that cage. And then slowly, the bird of course learns how to fly. So likewise, I want to come back to that point of, on one level, time is such a long thing, but Yogananda ji once told Kriyananda ji, he says, in God's play, there is no past and there is no future. He says, everything is happening in the present moment. And then he added, he says, so you can see, nothing is even really happening. And that is a very astonishing statement. That on one level, in this plane of duality, where as Krishna declares, I am space, I am time, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, he also is saying that I am inside of you, and when you choose to awake, they say that state of samadhi comes as a smriti, we understand. Also, Kriyananda ji mentions over there, go with intuition, more there, too careful reasoning. You see, some reasoning is required. Right now, I'm reasoning my thoughts in the best possible way for you to understand. And I'm sure if some of the things I'm saying are complicated, you must be really trying to reason. What is he saying? And how can that make sense to me in my life? So that reasoning faculty is important. But too careful a reasoning, Kriyananda ji says, leaves no room for intuition. Intuition is also known as the sixth sense. We operate through our senses. We are seeing something. Yes, just last week I was coming towards our ashram and I saw a road traffic accident on the way. And I just went and stopped and I saw a lot of people, actually more than about 40-50 people, which is, I should say, something in India. People stop, they see, but they don't do anything about it. And it took me 3-4 minutes to turn my car around a U-turn and return. And people were still looking at this gentleman who was on the road. And within a minute, I had him inside our car, somebody else accompanied us, I had a driver with me, and we all went to the hospital. In 5 minutes he was being examined. But in those 5 minutes, he asked me so many times, why am I here? Where is my bike? Oh, what happened to me? And then I would explain him, and then I said, oh, you're all right, don't worry, just minor scratches. And then he would thank us. But that cycle repeated 15 times in those 5 minutes, you might say again. And slowly he subsided and now he's totally healthy and fine. But what happens is, we are seeing the world through our senses. But the saints and sages tell us this body is like, you might say, it's a binocular. It's an instrument through which our soul is perceiving something. And when those senses either are not able to see, or like in that patient, he had, I think, a concussion, a mild head injury, and he was totally disoriented. His memory was not functioning properly, and that happens so many times. And we get a very limited understanding of the world as it is. And I think in today's time, we are being forced by maybe the universe itself to ask these higher questions. So intuition it is, Yogananda ji said. He says, intuition is the soul's power of knowing God. Intuition can be developed through meditation, he said. And then we know in our heart. You see, I said in the beginning that let's calm our heart. Why? Because we may think normally that, oh, I need my mind to think this life through. But Kriyananda ji said, what is your mind tinted by? Let's ask that question. Is the mind totally unbiased? No. Paramahansa Yoganandaji said our mind is biased by the feelings. He says reason follows feeling, and feelings are situated in the heart. So if you are happy, let's say for any reason, on one day, everything, you may find a person you don't like so much and you will greet him happily, or if somebody does something which irritates you on a regular day, you may say, oh, you may not even notice it. Why? Because your feelings are so clarified on that day. Likewise, in meditation, they say nothing external from us comes to us. We realize, Master says, soul realization is realizing in every atom of your body that you have always been in possession of this state of consciousness. All you have done on the spiritual path is improve your knowing daily through meditation. Why do we become peaceful through meditation? Why? Because we are experiencing it in our meditation, and that which you experience and concentrate upon starts becoming part of your nature. But if you really ask the question, where is peace coming from? It is coming from inside. So the senses are fine, but we need to listen to soul intuition, Kriyanandaji says over there. He says, go through life like a person on a ski. Again, a person on a ski, normally the best morning to do skis, I think, right after, a fresh snowfall. But at that time, you don't really know what's down the mountain. But you're seeing, you're using your senses, but you're also going with the flow. And you're taking a moment by moment decision. And I want to share a few stories because that makes this topic very practical. Early this year, friends, Master's birthday falls on 5th January. And we decided to do a spiritual fair for him. And so far in Pune, we've been doing, a program for 2 hours, sometimes 5 hours, because we screen a movie, Finding Happiness, along with the public talk. And that used to be the program. But and we thought, let's do that, but in another location. And we went to a certain place, and I spoke to the guy. This was a very central place, but very expensive. And we asked for a discount, and he says, well, it's not my birthday. I said, it's my guru's birthday. Please give us a discount. He said, well, it's not my birthday. And I said, well, a guru is, he blesses everybody. Maybe we will consider this. And he gave us some discount. And then when I came back to my team, there were so many wonderful ideas coming of adding free programs, free meditation classes, chakras classes, health workshop, energization exercises. We are celebrating 100 years of that technique, 70 years of autobiography, that soon we had the full day. And then somebody said, let's screen 1 or 2 other beautiful movies on Master's life. And we had to roll into a Saturday. From a Sunday, we moved into Saturday. And I went back to that office and I said, so I just needed the few more hours. Can you please give me further discount? And he says, yes, why don't you pay just for half day and use it for the full day? And I said, really? And his wife looked at me and she said, why don't you ask him why is he being so generous to you? I said, why are you being so kind and generous? And he was kind of just smiling, looking down, and she said, because his birthday falls on 5th January also. And my eyes popped out. I said, you told me it's not your birthday, and now here you are sharing the birthday with my guru. And he says, by the way, I've read many books of your guru. And, he was basically slightly skeptical, you might say, maybe, of spiritual organizations or their advantage really in practical day-to-day life. But one thing to another, we ended up doing a 24-hour active presentation, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday, likewise on Sunday. That was also the beginning. We were, again, intuitively, we felt we should experiment for the first time with online advertising through Facebook. And that went so viral, one of our ads, that Facebook wrote us a message, and which our friend who does Facebook advertising said, he said, I had not known of this. He says, Facebook came back to tell him that something we had invested about 3,000 rupees for gave us a mileage of about 50,000 because that ad of Yoganandaji's photo became self-propelling and tens of thousands of people saw it. That ad actually went into the neighboring states. People came from Gujarat, Karnataka, other parts of Maharashtra. They invited us. Our outreach began from Pune city. Now, all of this, on one level, you may say, because we didn't have a fixed plan, it's good to have a plan. Then we can channel, we can facilitate, the flow of grace. But if we plan things too much or downright to the details, it can induce rigidity. And many times I've heard from, especially, some writers in the West, that we go to India and things happen in a certain way, it all works out, but those miracles, they have said, do not happen so often in our country. And one author said, partly because we plan it down right to the final detail and are often focused on that flow. And we hardly give the divine a chance to do what it may be trying to express. The Guru's will, attunement for a disciple means to do what the Guru wants. It can be a very long-term project. Paramahansa Yogananda ji once as a little boy had a vision of 3 buildings on top of hills. And his Guru was teaching him something and he says, "You're not with me." And he says, "No sir, I can reply, I can recite every word you've said." You might say his reasoning faculty was so sharp. And Guruji said, he says, "But you're not with me. You were thinking of these 3 properties which were manifesting in your mind." And he says, "Right now is the time to focus. Those will come." And he was a boy at that time. These all things happened later in his life. So again, his soul knew this is going to happen. Space and time do not exist. Everything is happening in God's present moment. And we think we are guiding life. We have to live intelligently. But let's also see what the soul may want. I'll give you another experience from my own life. I was trying very hard, as any doctor in India would, for a residency. But especially I wanted to serve the community, serve rural places, and I will say it was a very, very selfless cause. I had to already give up many things to cling to that. And I went to one of the best hospitals in North India, St. Stephen's, which is known for its community medicine course, and I asked for it and they said, "Sorry, we don't have it. We have a seat though in rural surgery." And I had never thought, really, till that moment, it's surprising, in all my years of 6 years of training, I had never thought I'll be a surgeon. But when they told me it's rural surgery, that was the first batch in the country. They said, "We'll give you training in preventive medicine, pediatric and medical emergencies, orthopedics, gynecology, obstetrics, and general anesthesia with surgery." I was thrilled and I immediately, in a moment, I just said, "I want that course." And the person says, "Oh, that's just for your information. That's not available." One person left, but the deadline is way past by months. To make the long story short, my heart was selfless for this cause and I wanted to attend this. And on the day of my interview, I missed my interview by 7 hours. Because the previous night I read in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna telling Arjuna, "If you think you can do everything in life, I will watch. But the day you invite me to come into your life, I will come and take complete charge of it." So the next day when I was going for my interview, which was actually achieved by great difficulty after many, many disappointments and such, I met a blind man. He wanted a help to meet the President of India. He had a picture with APJ Abdul Kalam. And I thought it was right for me. He was starving, he had traveled from another state. And I thought I should help him. And I told Lord Krishna, I said, "I want to test those words. I have planned everything so far to the best of my knowledge, but it is selfless. You have put this blind man in front of me. I am going to help him. Please take care of my interview. And by evening, I will know the truth behind those words." There was no other way I could be more selfless and invite God. And by the way, it also felt right in my heart. So I went with him. I went with him to the Rajpath, it didn't work. I went with him to National Association of Blind. I went with him to a philanthropist friend I knew, he was abroad. In the end, I gave him some rupees from my side and we met later and I helped him further. But by the time I left him back at the railway station from 9 a.m., this had become about 4:30 p.m. And I told myself the hospital closes at 5 p.m. I should at least go and apologize for my absence because I had to meet the head of department. And friends, I went there and I was thinking, he was not in his office and I thought, should I make an excuse? And I said, no, maybe just tell the story in a more simple way and apologize. And just before I could even get my thoughts together, he walked into the corridor and I greeted him and I said, "Sir, good evening." He said, "Good evening." He was very elderly. And I said, "Sir, you called me for an interview this morning. I'm Dr. Aditya and I'm sorry." I said, "You called me for an interview this morning." He said, "Oh, of course I did. I am so sorry, I forgot all about it." And he said, I was busy in some work. I just came to the hospital. I'm sorry to keep you waiting since morning." And I said, "Oh no, it's fine, that's fine." But I was just in that moment thinking that Krishna, that the soul, God, is trying to help us in the most mundane thing. I got a degree. I got admission into that college without actually an interview. He took my phone, he called another person, he says, I have just interviewed this fine young man and I think he is appropriate for that post. Let's put him in. And I joined that course without an application or a paper. What I'm trying to say is, we have to do our part. God has given us the faculty of mon, the mind, and the buddhi, the intelligence. But let's not bring it to such a point where we exclude Him. Meditate more, let's practice devotion, let's be selfless in our causes, and let's call on soul guidance. Guide me, and let's test our intuition one step at a time, and then it will grow into something where we will understand His whispers all the time. Joy to